Hey there, it's Mark from Max Q with another update on the J-3 Cub Restoration project. As I mentioned in the previous videos, a couple of recent videos, I had some work to do away from the shop, non-aviation work, and so the wings still haven't changed much. However, these compression struts down here on the floor and all their associated parts, they're all ready to go back in the left wing, as well as the drag and anti-drag wires. So this wing will be back together here very soon. And then the right wing, where I've done all that already, I worked on another aspect of it here the other day. The wing root fairing, so this being the right wing, the fuselage would be over here on this side. This is the top of the wing, and so the fairing has screws, of course, that hold it in place. And I've put these aluminum tabs with steel nut plates in here for the screws so that those will be easy to remove and replace over the years, as opposed to the way that it's normally done, just the way Piper did it. They just run sheet metal screws right into the rib itself, which is a thin aluminum, and it works. And as it turns out, even on this airplane here, these holes haven't been re-drilled multiple times, even though the airplane's from the 40s. So that's kind of interesting, because these appear to be the original ribs, but oftentimes these are really riddled with holes because the screws, they don't tighten up very well in time, and you strip them out, you have to put bigger screws in, and then you have to make a new hole. So anyway, this one for some reason is in pretty good shape that way. However, on the top side here where I put these tabs and nut plates, that'll be really handy, because if the screws are backing out, which they tend to do over time, you don't have to worry about that. That's not going to happen with a nut plate like this. And on the top, they're difficult to get to, so that'll certainly solve a problem there. But on the bottom here, these fairings, as it turns out, don't hang over outboard of the rib hardly at all like the top ones do. And that meant I had more room to put these tabs and nut plates over here on the outboard side of the rib. So as it turns out, I've decided I'm not going to put the tabs and nut plates on the bottom. Those are easy to get to because they're right over your head, and maybe these will hold up as well as the ones that were on it as they were. But I did lay out an entirely new pattern for where the screws are going to go, and which took a little longer than you might imagine to come up with a really good solution that way. But anyway, so that is handled, and that's going to save a little bit of time. And then over here on the other wing, I still need to put the tabs and nut plates on the top side of that butt rib. But again, on the bottom side, I'll just mimic what I did on the other wing. So otherwise, the cables, I still haven't made the cables, but I will here very soon. This week's going to be a lot of things related to this wing on the left wing over here that's on the right side of the screen. So, but I did get started on the fuselage, so I've got that to show here in just a moment. But first I was going to show that I used to run an aviation blog called Airpigs, and it's actually still up, but I haven't posted there since actually 2019. That's the most recent post. In fact, it's showing right there on that screenshot. And it's kind of interesting because that was for a Kickstarter campaign that I was doing for an aviation magazine that I was trying to start called Vintage Aviation. And if you've been paying attention to these videos, well, you've seen the Vintage Aviation before, because this graphic I have behind the lathe is a promotional graphic that I had simulating one of the cover ideas for the magazine. When I did the Kickstarter campaign, I had a booth up at the Fly Market at Oshkosh for the project, and those big graphics then were used there. As it turned out, it did not succeed on Kickstarter, so I never did make the magazine. But as this slide shows, I put a lot of work into it, and I had a lot of mock magazine covers, and I had worked out a lot of the layout on the inside and such. And the idea, the unique element of it was going to be about vintage aviation, but it was also going to be using vintage photographs. So none of it would be modern photographs. They'd all be from back in the day. I thought that was kind of a neat idea, and it would have been, I mean, it would have been a challenge to source those images, but there's so many cool images, and to me they have a little more impact because, hey, these are from back in the day. So anyway, the reason I'm bringing all this up, I really like this logo that I created for it, and I thought, you know what, maybe what I should do is expand the Max Q YouTube channel to include some things specifically more like I would have done for vintage aviation. Now, I probably won't be using vintage imagery. I'll probably go out. I have already lined up some airplanes to be able to go do some little stories on. And so anyway, here in the future, the Max Q channel is going to have the restoration project as one arm, and then hopefully this vintage aviation will be a whole nother arm. So we will see how that goes. And then real quick, back to air pigs, I just thought I'd show to show that I've been around quite a while in my aviation roots. This is a post I put up years ago, and that's actually me as a kid. I was only 11 years old there. My dad taught me to prop the Breezy that we owned. It had a 90 Continental on it, and of course that's a pusher prop. You sit at the front of the airplane, the engine's in the middle pointing backwards, and it was a fairly easy airplane to prop, actually. And so as an 11-year-old, I successfully started, and I've never lost any fingers or arms, so that's pretty cool. And I think that's one of the reasons why I enjoy the whole process of using your hands to hand prop an airplane. To me, it's a great joy, and it's kind of interesting because a lot of people today don't think it's the kind of thing you should ever do. Obviously, it's critical that you do it properly. So if you don't know how to do it, yeah, absolutely shouldn't do it. But if you do, it's a really cool thing. So anyway, and then a couple other quick things. I've created a new shirt that's about to go live on Shirtberg. And I'm not going to say any more, but there's a picture of it that you saw. And if you think that might look interesting, well, that's something to pay attention about in the future. And then also, I'm going to upgrade the cameras here for the process of creating these videos. I'm buying it's actually a couple generations old, but that makes it quite affordable, an Insta360 X3 camera. And so that's the kind of camera that can do these shots where even though the camera is essentially stationary, it's filming in all directions at once. And then in the edit, you can pan around and show what you want to show. And that'll just give me so much more ability to show cool things in the shop, the things that are going on, and it just make it seem a lot more dynamic, I think, anyway. So we'll see. Maybe by the next shop video, I'll have that as a way to show what's going on here with the project. So anyway, so then I wanted to go ahead and show in here in the spray booth where the fuselage is. I have gotten started doing some of the fuselage repair that needs to be done. So I showed early on that there were some tubes that were going to get replaced. I think you can see probably here that there's some heavy pitting on this tube. There's some issues on this lower longeron. So there's a variety of splices and patches that are going to take place here real soon. And I got started with that here recently. So I created this little block. It's a hardwood block that I used to gauge the angle of that cut. So you can see I clamped this on to the tube. I actually made this with a 3/4 inch diameter hole in it, which matches the diameter of the lower longerons. These tubes here are actually only 5/8 of an inch, so it's a little bit loose. But I put some tape on it and then clamp this, and then it becomes a really simple little guide for the hacksaw to be able to cut into that tube and get you the nice angle that you're supposed to have. And that is spelled out in some old publications. The AC 4313, there's the -1B and the -2B. Those are the modern versions. These books have been around, or this information's been around since certainly the 40s. And so these books are actually available for free download as a PDF from the FAA. And they are very, very useful, one, in understanding the processes by which aircraft repair is done, but also just well, I should say, or in affecting those repairs, like what I'm doing here. So these things that I need to know as far as what is acceptable practice for replacing these tubes and such is all spelled out in detail in those books. So that's a pretty cool thing, and especially since those are now available as a free download, if you have an interest in this stuff, you want to learn, those are really, they're quite fascinating. So that's some pretty cool stuff there. And then also this video, this is an amazing video because it's from the 40s. I assume it's the 40s. It looks like it anyway. It can't be too far off of that. and it shows the actual detailed process of repairing tubing, structural tubing in an aircraft. It's extremely detailed, and it's very old school, but then I actually think that's pretty cool. But it's really interesting to see that this was pretty much the order of the day, because way back, especially in the military, a lot of aircraft were damaged on a regular basis, you know, in a small way. And so the repairs were happening all the time. So repairing tubing like this and then doing fabric repairs as well was something that was extremely common. And it is actually kind of interesting that this style of construction with an airplane, and this is something that I was actually passionate about as far back as high school or maybe even before, when the aluminum airplanes were really beginning to dominate, certainly through the 70s and such, the way aircraft were being manufactured. I had this really strong feeling that there's a lot to be said for the steel tube and fabric aircraft, and predominantly, well, two reasons, I guess I would say. One is they're certainly robust in a crash situation. So there's a lot of structure there to keep the cabin intact and keep you alive. And then secondarily, as we're doing here, you can strip the fabric off and you can make any repairs relatively easily to that steel tubing. And then you can put new fabric on, and then that airplane's just like new again. And it can be done over and over and over. And in a sense, these airplanes won't ever go away. And the aluminum airplane, I'm pretty sure that's not going to be the case. I think the aluminum airplanes, most of them will probably reach a point of being thrown away. Who knows? Maybe not. But anyway, I've just been an advocate for steel tube and fabric for a long time. I just think it's extremely cool. Obviously, it's a very labor-intensive method to build airplanes, and so it's not necessarily practical, but in the modern world. But I do think it's pretty awesome. So anyway, I did go ahead and cut this one diagonal, and you can see, so that's a 30-degree angle, and it is kind of neat. I can kind of show here, but this picture also shows that the inside of that tube looks really good. So that's really encouraging, because given that there's some really heavy pitting down here at this end of the tube, it's really good to see that the inside of that tube is not looking bad at all. So I think we're going to be in fine shape. And then again, I'm going to be removing the grab handle here and replacing a section of the lower longeron. Have to put that back on, and then there's going to be a repair over there on that side as well. So there's going to be, in future videos, I'll have more detail on all of that. But at least you can see I am getting that started. And then there's also going to be, I'm going to be welding some tabs on here for an access panel that's going to go on the bottom side of the fuselage here, so that there will be greater access to the tail wheel hardware at that end. And then up here where the jack screw for the trim assembly is, that hole at the bottom will give you access there. So that's a really nice modification to make to a J-3. So anyway, so that's the status here at the moment. We're definitely making progress, and we're going to get back onto it real hardcore this week. So hopefully the next video, between work accomplished and trying out that Insta360, might be pretty entertaining. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.